When I was 14, my dad drove me 3 hours into the mountains and told me, "Find your own way home if you're going to act like a man." Then he just left, pulled off down the snowy road, and didn't look back. No jacket, no gloves, nothing. Just me standing there in the middle of nowhere, snowflakes hitting my face like tiny knives, realizing in real time that I didn't mean anything to him. That was the last time I saw him. For years, I didn't even know if he was alive. It's hard to describe that kind of abandonment without sounding dramatic. People hear, "My dad left me in the mountains," and think I'm exaggerating or trying to make a movie out of my life. But that's exactly what happened. He always had this twisted idea of what it meant to be a man. Never cry, never ask for help, never admit weakness. And I'd just gotten into a fight with him earlier that week about not wanting to play football anymore. I was small, skinny, never really into sports, more into sketching, reading, stuff like that. He called me a pussy at dinner, in front of my mom and little sister. I snapped back for the first time in my life. Told him maybe being a man didn't mean smashing your head against other guys for 4 quarters and pretending it didn't hurt. The look he gave me, that's when I should have known he was planning something. His whole face changed. He didn't yell, didn't throw anything. He just stared at me like I disrespected the one thing he valued most, his warped idea of masculinity. So when he offered to take me on a father-son trip the next weekend, I thought maybe, stupidly, that he was trying to fix things. Maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe he realized he'd gone too far. Instead, he drove me out there, parked near a trailhead, told me to get out, and said those words I'll never forget. "Find your own way home if you're going to act like a man." Then he left me standing there. The first hour, I told myself it was a test, that he'd be waiting just around the bend, or maybe come back after scaring me a little. I walked a mile down the trail, freezing, teeth chattering, trying not to cry. Every time I thought I heard an engine, I sprinted back to the road, expecting him to be there. He never was. By the time I realized he really wasn't coming back, it was dark. I huddled under a pine tree, shivering so hard my jaw ached. My hands were numb. At some point, I must have passed out, because I woke up with snow half covering my shoes. That's when panic set in. I wasn't thinking about manhood or proving anything. I just wanted my mom. I wanted anyone. It took me 2 days to get out of those mountains. I don't remember all of it, just flashes. Walking until my legs gave out, drinking water from a stream that probably wasn't safe, almost stepping on what I swear was a snake coiled under some leaves. At one point, I thought I saw my dad's truck up ahead, and I started running, but it was just a rusty old trailer. Eventually, I stumbled onto a gas station off some highway. The guy working there called the sheriff, who called my mom. When she picked me up, she was crying so hard she could barely drive. But she didn't ask me what happened, didn't ask where Dad was or why I was out there. She just kept saying, "It's okay, you're safe now." I could tell she knew. Deep down, she knew what he'd done. The next morning, he was gone. Packed up his stuff, emptied his side of the closet, took his tools from the garage, and left. No note, no goodbye. Just gone. My mom didn't report him, didn't chase him. I think part of her was relieved. That was 20 years ago. Since then, I built my own life. Finished school, worked crap jobs until I figured out what I was good at, made some real friends, eventually started my own construction business. I don't think about him much anymore, except sometimes when it's cold outside and I can still feel that night in my bones. Then last month, his name popped up on my phone. Just like that. After 2 decades of silence. No warning, no build-up. Just Dad flashing across my screen like a ghost. I don't even remember saving his number, but apparently I had. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just sat there staring at it until it stopped ringing. Then he left a voicemail. I didn't check it right away. Part of me didn't want to hear his voice. But the curiosity gnawed at me for days. What could he possibly have to say after 20 years? What excuse, what story, what justification could even begin to cover what he did? When I finally pressed play, his voice came through, older, raspier, but still his. And the first thing he said wasn't an apology. It wasn't, "I'm sorry." It wasn't even, "I've missed you." It was, "Hey, it's your dad. I need your help." When I finally heard that voicemail, I had to sit down. My knees literally buckled, like my body couldn't hold me up. 20 years gone, not a single letter, not a birthday card, not even a rumor of where he was. And the first words out of his mouth, "I need your help." Not, I'm sorry for what I did. Not, I shouldn't have left you in the middle of nowhere to freeze. Just, I need your help. He went on to say something about how he was sick, that he didn't have anyone else, and that he figured maybe I'd be the only one who'd still care. His voice cracked a little, but I couldn't tell if it was emotion or just age. He gave me a number to call back, said he was in a shelter in Denver, and then the message cut off. I replayed it about a dozen times, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Part of me wanted to erase it, pretend it never happened, keep living my life without reopening that wound. But another part, the 14-year-old kid inside me, the one still shivering under that pine tree, wanted answers. Why? Why did he do it? Why did he think it was okay to vanish? For a week, I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom, not my girlfriend, not my friends. I just carried it around in my chest like a live grenade. Every night, lying in bed, I'd hear his voice again. I need your help. Finally, I told my mom. We were sitting at her kitchen table, drinking coffee, like we always do on Sundays. I just blurted it out. Dad called me. The look on her face, it was like I'd punched her. She set her mug down real slow, like her hands weren't steady. What do you mean he called you? I played her the voicemail. She sat there listening, stone-faced, not saying a word until it ended. Then she shook her head. Don't you dare, she whispered. Don't I dare what? I asked. Don't you dare go damn. Don't you dare let him back in. Her voice was sharp, angrier than I'd heard it in years. I could see her hands trembling against the mug. She'd rebuilt her life without him too. She'd worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, gone without sleep, carried everything on her back while he was off God knows where. She hated him, and I get it. But I couldn't just let it go. I told her I wasn't making promises, but I needed to hear him out. She slammed her mug down, so hard coffee sloshed over the edge. You don't owe that man a damn thing. She's right. I don't. But I also know myself, and I knew the questions weren't going away until I looked him in the eye. So I called the number. A man answered. Wasn't him, some worker at the shelter. He said my dad had been there a few weeks, that he was in rough shape, and if I wanted to see him, I should come soon. That phrase, come soon, lodged in my throat like a fishbone. The next day, I drove out to Denver. 3 hours in the opposite direction of where he'd abandoned me. The irony didn't escape me. My palms were sweating on the steering wheel the whole drive. I kept imagining what I'd say when I saw him. Would I scream? Would I punch him? Would I just walk away? The shelter was this low, gray building that looked more like a warehouse. Inside, it smelled like soup and disinfectant. A woman at the desk asked who I was there for. I told her his name, and she gave me this sympathetic look that made me feel sick. Then they brought him out. I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner, his hair gone gray, face gaunt, skin leathery like he'd spent years baking in the sun. But those eyes, those same cold blue eyes that had once looked at me like I wasn't enough? Yeah, I knew those right away. He smiled when he saw me. A small, weak smile, but a smile. There's my boy, he said. I froze. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Hearing him call me my boy felt like someone had shoved a knife in my gut. He tried to stand, but his legs shook, and he collapsed back into the chair. Thanks for coming, he wheezed. I didn't know who else to call. I wanted to say a million things at once. Wanted to ask where the hell he'd been, why he did what he did, why he thought he could just show up in my life like this. But nothing came out. I just stood there, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. He kept talking, said he'd been in and out of jobs, that he'd made some mistakes, that life hadn't been kind to him. Not once did he say, I'm sorry. Not once did he take responsibility for leaving me in those woods. It was all excuses, all deflections. Finally, I cut him off. Why me? I asked. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. Why now? After 20 years, why call me? He looked me dead in the eye, and for a second, I thought maybe he'd finally admit it. Maybe he'd finally tell me the truth. Instead, he said, because you're the only one strong enough to help me. And that's when I realized he still didn't get it. He still thought abandoning me was some kind of twisted lesson. He still thought I owed him something for surviving it. Sitting across from him in that shelter felt like being 14 again. My body went stiff, my jaw locked, my chest burned with this mix of rage and nausea I couldn't swallow down. He looked at me like I was some kind of lifeline, like after 20 years of silence, I was supposed to just slide right back into the role of son and caretaker. I asked him again, quieter this time. Why me? He coughed into his fist, his whole body shaking like a leaf. Because you're the only one who made it. You're the only one tough enough. The words sat heavy between us. Tough enough? Was that what he thought he'd done? Made me tough? Like abandoning your kid in the snow was some genius survival test? I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag him out to those mountains and leave him there to see how tough he really was. But instead, I asked the one thing that had been rotting in my chest since I was a kid. Did you ever love me? He blinked, caught off guard. His lips parted, but no words came out right away. For the first time, he looked small, like the weight of that question crushed whatever pride he had left. Finally, he muttered, "Of course I did. That's why I did it. I wanted you to be a man. That was it." That was his big justification. 20 years of silence, 20 years of growing up without a dad, 20 years of thinking I wasn't good enough. And his answer was that abandoning me was love. Something in me snapped. You think love is leaving your kid to freeze to death? My voice echoed through the shelter. A few people glanced over, but I didn't care. You think love is disappearing, never calling, never writing? You think love is making me feel like I wasn't worth staying for? He winced, like my words hurt more than his illness ever could. He tried to reach for my hand across the table, but I pulled back so fast it was like his touch was poison. I made mistakes, he said weakly. Mistakes. I laughed, but it came out sharp, ugly. Forgetting someone's birthday is a mistake. Burning dinner is a mistake. What you did wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. You chose to leave me there. You chose to disappear. Don't stand here 20 years later acting like it was some accident. His face crumpled, but not with guilt. It was pity, like he still thought I didn't get it. You wouldn't understand, he whispered. That was the moment I realized he was never going to give me what I wanted. He was never going to say sorry, never going to admit he was wrong. He was too far gone into his own delusion, convinced his cruelty was love and his abandonment was some twisted gift. I stood up. My legs felt like concrete, but I forced them to move. I'm done. He panicked. Wait, don't go, please. I need you. I've got nowhere else to go. They're talking about discharging me next week. I don't have money. I don't have family. Not my problem, I snapped. My voice shook, but I didn't care. You had a family. You had a son. You threw that away. He tried again, desperate now. I'm sick. The doctors don't think I have much time. Don't you want to make peace before it's too late? That hit me harder than I expected. Not because I wanted peace with him, but because a small, ugly part of me still wanted closure. Still wanted him to admit he'd been wrong. Still wanted him to look me in the eye and say the words I'd been waiting to hear since I was 14. But he wouldn't. I saw it clear as day in his face. He wasn't calling for me. He was calling for anyone who'd pick up. I was just the one who answered. I walked out without another word. The air outside was freezing, and for a second, I was back in those mountains, breath fogging, teeth clattering. But this time, I wasn't a scared kid waiting for someone to come back. This time, I was the one walking away. I sat in my truck for a long time, just gripping the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't start the engine. Eventually, I broke down, full-on sobbing, the kind of crying I hadn't done since I was a kid. I pounded my fist against the dashboard until my knuckles bled, screaming until my throat was raw. I don't even know if it was grief or rage. Maybe both. When I finally drove off, I told myself I was done. I'd said my piece, seen him with my own eyes, and walked away. That was supposed to be the end. But life isn't that clean. A week later, I got another call, this time from the shelter worker. She said my dad had collapsed and been taken to the hospital. That if I wanted to see him again, I should come soon. I almost threw my phone across the room. It felt like the universe was dragging me back into something I didn't want. I told myself I wasn't going. I'd already closed that chapter. But that night, lying awake, I kept hearing his voice again. Don't you want to make peace before it's too late? And the truth is, I didn't know if I did. When the shelter worker called about him collapsing, I told myself I wasn't going. I'd already done my part, more than he deserved. But I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't eat the next day. My brain kept circling back to it, like a song stuck on repeat. What if he died and the last thing I said to him was not my problem? Part of me wanted that to be the last thing. The other part, the 14-year-old kid who still wanted answers, that part wouldn't shut up. 2 days later, I caved. Drove to the hospital in Denver with my stomach in knots. The whole ride there, I argued with myself. One voice said, "You don't owe him anything. Turn around." Another voice whispered, If you don't go, you'll regret it forever. When I walked into his room, I almost turned right back around. He looked worse than before, like the hospital bed itself was eating him alive. His skin was gray, lips cracked, tubes running from his arms. His eyes opened when he heard me, and they lit up like I was some kind of savior. "You came," he croaked. I didn't sit down. I just stood there by the door, arms crossed. "Don't make a big deal out of it." He chuckled weakly, which turned into a cough that rattled his whole chest. "Still got that fire in you." Good. That line made my blood boil. Fire? Like he thought he'd given me that by leaving me in the snow. Like all the trauma and rage he created was some gift. "You're dying, and you're still talking like that?" I snapped. He sighed, his shoulders sagging into the bed. "I made mistakes. I wasn't a good dad. But I wanted you to be strong. The world doesn't care about weak men." "There it is again," I said, my voice rising. "That bullshit excuse. You keep acting like abandoning me was a lesson. It wasn't, it was abuse. You didn't make me strong. You broke me. You don't get to sit here and pat yourself on the back like it was for my benefit." For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Not fear of me, fear of dying. His voice cracked. "I don't want to go without making things right." "Then say it," I shot back. "Say you were wrong. Say you're sorry. Say you shouldn't have left me out there. Say you were a coward who ran from his family instead of being a father." The room went silent. The machines beeped steadily, his chest rising and falling under the thin hospital blanket. His eyes filled with tears, something I had never seen from him. Not once in my life. He swallowed hard, like the words were caught in his throat. Finally, he whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have felt relief. I should have felt the weight lift. But instead, I felt nothing. Just empty." The words were too late, 20 years too late. They didn't heal anything. They didn't undo the nights I laid awake wondering why I wasn't good enough, or the years I watched other kids toss footballs with their dads while mine was a ghost. "Do you even know what you did to me?" I asked. My voice shook, but I didn't care. "Do you know how many nights I thought about walking into traffic because I thought I wasn't worth shit? Do you know how many times I had to fight to convince myself I deserved to be alive after what you did?" His face crumpled, but he didn't answer. He just cried. Weak, rasping sobs. And that's when I realized something that hit me harder than anything he'd ever said. He didn't have the capacity to understand. He wasn't capable of truly seeing the damage he caused. He was too small, too broken, too wrapped up in his own warped worldview. He could say the words, but he couldn't mean them in the way I needed. I sat down finally, more from exhaustion than forgiveness. I looked him in the eye. "I don't forgive you. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I hear you." His breathing hitched. He nodded, slow and weak. "That's enough," he whispered. We sat in silence for a long time. I stared at the machines, at the tubes, at the frail body of the man who once seemed so invincible to me. And I thought about all the years I'd spent chasing his approval, only to find out he was never capable of giving it. A doctor came in, checked his vitals, adjusted something on the floor. I stood up, ready to leave. My dad looked at me, panic in his eyes. "Don't go yet." "I have to," I said. "I've got a life. A business. People who actually give a damn about me." He reached out, his hand trembling in the air between us. For a second, I considered taking it. But then I remembered the snow biting my skin, my mom crying in the car, the empty years of silence. I let his hand drop. "I'll check in," I lied. "But don't expect more than that." As I walked out, I felt torn in half. One part of me wanted to never see him again, to let him fade into the past where he belonged. Another part, the wounded kid inside me, still wanted one last moment of connection, even if it was poisoned. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I kept replaying his "I'm sorry," wondering if I should have felt something from it. But the truth was, all I felt was emptiness. That night, the hospital called again. His condition was getting worse. They didn't say it outright, but I could tell they were warning me. He didn't have much time. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the same question looping in my head. When he goes, am I going to regret not giving him more? The night the hospital called again, I didn't answer. Let it ring until it went to voicemail. I couldn't bring myself to hear the words I knew were coming. I lay there staring at the phone on the nightstand, chest tight, heart thudding like I'd just sprinted a mile. Eventually, I pressed play. It was a nurse this time. She said his breathing had gotten shallow, that it might be a matter of hours, maybe a day. She told me if I wanted to be there, Now was the time. Her voice was soft, like she already knew I was carrying more than I could handle. I sat on the edge of my bed until the sun came up, wrestling with it. Half of me wanted to let him die alone, the way he left me to fend for myself. It felt fair, poetic. The other half, God, I hated that other half, kept whispering that no one deserves to die with no one by their side. By mid-morning, I was back on the road to Denver. The whole drive, I told myself I wasn't going for him. I was going for me. To make sure I could live with myself after. To know, when the dirt hit his coffin, I'd done everything I could, even if he hadn't. When I walked into his room, he looked like a shadow of the man I remembered. His chest rose and fell in shallow waves. Eyes half closed, lips cracked and dry. Machines beeped softly, the only sign he was still tethered to this world. He saw me, or maybe just sensed me, and a faint smile flickered across his face. "You came," he whispered, barely audible. I didn't sit right away, just stood there, hands shoved in my jacket pockets, staring at the man who had defined so much of my pain. I thought about all the nights I lay awake wondering if I wasn't enough. All the years I carried that shame like a backpack full of bricks. Finally, I pulled a chair closer and sat down. "I'm here." His hand twitched, reaching toward me. I hesitated, then, against every instinct I had, I let him take mine. His skin was paper-thin, cold, fragile. The same hands that had once steered a truck down a snowy road while his 14-year-old son sat in silence, not knowing it would be the last time they'd drive anywhere together. "I wanted to make you proud," he croaked. My throat tightened. "You could have just been there. That's all it would have taken." Tears welled in his eyes. I was wrong. His voice broke, a whisper cracking under its own weight. "I thought leaving you would make you stronger. I thought you'd hate me, but at least you'd survive. I didn't know it would hurt you that way." That way, like it was a misunderstanding. Like he hadn't carved open a wound that bled for 2 decades. But he said the words I'd been chasing my whole life. I was wrong. And the strangest thing happened. I didn't feel anger anymore. Not relief either. Just this heavy, tired sadness. Like I'd been carrying a boulder on my back and finally set it down, only to realize I had no idea how to stand without it. "You did hurt me," I said, my voice cracking. "You broke me in ways you'll never understand. But I survived in spite of you, not because of you." He closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I know." We sat like that for a long time. No more words, just the sound of machines and his ragged breathing. I held his hand because I knew it was the last time I ever would. Around midnight, his breaths got slower. Shallow. The nurse came in, adjusted something, gave me a sympathetic look. I squeezed his hand tighter, even though part of me still wanted to let go. His last words were almost a whisper I had to lean close to catch. "You did good, son." Then his chest stopped rising. The machine beeped once, flat and steady. The nurse shut it off, covered him with a sheet, and left me alone in the room. I sat there staring at the shape of him under the blanket, waiting to feel something. Rage, relief, grief, anything. What I felt was complicated, like a knot of emotions I couldn't untangle. On the drive home, the night sky was clear. Stars spread across the black like scattered glass. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a scared kid lost in the snow. I felt like a man who had finally stopped looking for his father in places he'd never be found. When I got home, I sat on my porch until sunrise, letting the cold air bite at my skin. It didn't feel like punishment anymore, just weather. I don't know if I forgive him. Maybe forgiveness isn't even the point. What I do know is this: I showed up when he didn't. I faced him when he couldn't face himself. And when the time came, I held his hand, even though he never held mine. That's who I am. Not because of him, because I chose to be.